I think shopping has always been a very social pursuit if you sort of go back several years. And I think for a while there, it became a little bit clinical in the e-commerce world. It's great to have really slick user experiences to reduce the checkout time. That obviously has a large impact. But shopping is entertainment. A lot of the content that people watch that is around shopping or TikTok shop content is entertaining. It's by creators. People will happily watch several hours of a live stream. I really want us to be a growth engine for retailers. It's hard out there. Margins are compressed, profitability is under real pressure. And I do genuinely think that there is a big upside opportunity across TikTok and across, discovery commerce.
You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. Hello and welcome back to Retail Disrupted. I'm your host, Natalie Berg, and today I am delighted to be joined by Paul Mears, Head of Retail at TikTok here in the UK. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Delighted to be on. Essential listening as well, I think, for the UK retail industry.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We're going to be diving into how TikTok is reshaping retail. Last year, TikTok was the UK's fastest growing online retailer. So brands, this is a channel that you cannot ignore. And Paul's going to give you some tips on how you can tap into this growth. We're also going to be exploring some of the findings from TikTok's first UK shopping report, which lifts a lid on our shopping habits and what we're searching for on the platform, which apparently is everything from Labubus to lip stains. So, Paul, we have lots to discuss. But before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. So 20-year career, I guess, predominantly in the tech and advertising industry. I've been with TikTok for about 3 years now. And at the moment, I'm leading retail and e-commerce on our advertising business. So we have a large advertising business, and then we obviously have a large e-commerce operation as well. You might know that as TikTok Shop. And so we work incredibly closely together between the two businesses. Obviously, a lot of our TikTok Shop merchants are increasingly becoming large advertisers, and vice versa. A lot of my big advertising customers are obviously looking to get involved in TikTok Shop. So, I broadly say I'm privileged to spend most of my days talking to around the top 100 retailers in the UK. So really nice cross section. I get to hear, what their, big issues are. And, that's everything obviously from the large brand names, the high street retailers, through to your scale ups, your direct to consumer e-commerce brands that are, finding success in the UK market. So a really nice cross section, very interesting discussions I get to have with all of them.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to pick your brain and hear more about what they're saying, what some of the challenges are, and we'll get into all of that. But I guess if we just back up a little bit, I know the vast majority of our listeners will, of course, know TikTok. It's one of the most downloaded apps in the world. But can you just give us a very brief overview of the platform and how people are using it today?
Yeah, sure. So when you open up TikTok, you arrive at the For You page. So that is our stream that you swipe up through, which essentially is an algorithmic feed of content that we think you're going to be interested in. And I think the really interesting thing to land straight away is that it is an entertainment platform, not a social platform. So you don't necessarily have to have a large audience for your content to find an audience. So we think about it like a content graph as opposed to a social graph. What it does and what it's great at is recognizing what content you're into, serving up lots more of that, but then also sort of this serendipity. So putting in little bits of content that even you might not know that you like, but, based on the algorithm, it's able to recommend that you'll like that. So for me, in my For You page, I mean, it's sadly quite demographically accurate of my age, but I like running, so I get a lot of these videos around zone 2 running, keeping your heart rate in the right zone. Somehow the algorithms worked out I have a Cavapoo dog, so I get a lot of that content. And then I just get a lot of like sports, comedy, AI news. I'm still getting quite a lot of Oasis content as well. I was lucky enough to go to one of the gigs earlier this year. But my feed will be entirely different to yours, to my wife's, to everyone else's.
Yeah, it's that kind of algorithm-based personalization. And I have to admit, I only just really got on TikTok recently and started posting videos about retail and also clips of the podcast. So it's been a steep learning curve for me, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, mine is a real mix of kind of retail, French, and gardening. So it just says a lot about me, actually.
Well, and I saw that you had a video blow up in the last couple of days, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I posted a reaction to some breaking news, and it went unexpectedly viral. So I guess that's just testament to how quickly things can move on TikTok. So
Exactly. And sometimes it can be hard. A lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about the algorithm, but I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to if you make great content that has a real hook early on. It's all about stopping people from swiping, that kind of thumb stopping moment.
Yeah. And, we met, I should just share with our listeners, we met a couple years ago when I was chairing one of the streams at Retail Week Live, and you were on stage. And you said two things that stuck with me, one of which you just repeated, which is that people open TikTok to be entertained, which I thought was a really interesting way of and very accurate way of putting it. And the second thing you said to me was that at the time, and maybe this has changed because it's been a couple years, but you said at the time the fastest growing demographic is actually women that are 35 plus. So which surprised me, I have to admit. I thought there's maybe this misperception that it's just younger consumers using TikTok. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on whether that's still the case or if there's any other sort of myth busting that we should explore.
Yeah, I think this was, something that probably an assumption that a lot of people made, particularly in the early days. And it's true that we had heritage with a Gen Z audience, and there was a lot of dancing content when we first emerged. I mean, today it's very, very broad. So we have over 30 million people visiting the app on a monthly basis. The average age now is over 30. Our fastest growing demographics are those older demographics. So yeah, it has evolved massively now. Our largest content vertical is actually comedy. So yeah, I think right to raise those. That's probably, but I think people are starting to, I think, recognize that now, and it's probably not something I hear as much, but certainly for the first couple of years, yeah, it was a big sort of myth to bust, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about retail. A lot of our listeners will be familiar with the TikTok made me buy it. And you now, of course, have TikTok Shop and live shopping. So can you tell us a little bit more about TikTok as a retail platform and how it fits with your broader strategy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned TikTok made me buy it. That is genuinely where it all started, several years ago now, where we just started to observe this trend that people were sharing purchases they made, reviews. We are a creator-led platform at the end of the day. And so we really just started to stoke that behavior. TikTok made me buy it now as a hashtag has over 250 billion global video views. So that is videos with that hashtag attached to it. So it has been an absolute phenomenon. I think about 50 million of those just coming from the billion coming from the UK alone. So
Wow.
it was around that period, and then 2021 when we launched TikTok Shop in the UK as well. And I think today we benefited from we've having TikTok Shop in the UK for several years now. We've seen that behaviour evolve over time. And I think today, we represent a pretty mature proposition for retailers. Obviously, I think TikTok Shop gets a lot of the plaudits and the interesting. It is a very exciting, I'm sure we're going to talk more about it today, but it is a very exciting space because it is a slightly new type of retail we call discovery commerce. But increasingly as well, we are able to drive in-store sales as well. We've done a great study with Boots where we showed a significant uplift in-store sales. We are obviously driving a lot of on-website and app sales as well. So it's a pretty broad picture now. We're obviously willing to work with retailers where they want to drive the sale. But yeah, I think that it's been pretty interesting, the TikTok Shop space.
Yeah, and I do want to come back to TikTok Shop because I think there's a lot to explore there. But I think it's really interesting as an analyst, and I feel like a little bit of a broken record here, but I think it's such an important point. I make it time and time again on the podcast because if we look at traditional e-commerce, it's still broadly transactional today. It's still very one-dimensional. I think it's more about purchasing rather than shopping. So there's no real emotion attached to that experience. So I think it's clear that there's this opportunity to do exactly what you guys are doing and make online shopping experiences much more engaging, more immersive, more relevant. And I think it's really interesting, especially with social commerce, or I love that you call it discovery commerce. That's probably even more accurate. But you're marrying up the convenience and ease of online shopping with discovery, and that is so powerful. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on this, Paul, just sort of how you see e-commerce evolving and specifically the role of discovery in a digital setting.
Well, I think shopping has always been a very social pursuit if you sort of go back several years. And I think for a while there, it became a little bit clinical in the e-commerce world. It just became about rapidly, and not necessarily a bad thing. It's great to have really slick user experiences to reduce the checkout time. That obviously has a large impact. But I think the as you rightly identify, the trend has been that shopping is entertainment, and so we've really seen that playing out. And a lot of the content that people watch that is around shopping or TikTok Shop content is entertaining. It's by creators. You only have to watch a live as well to show. People will happily watch several hours of a live stream because it is entertainment. And I think that is backed up in the numbers as well. So we did a study with Retail Economics. It was about a year ago now. But they forecast that the social commerce, discovery commerce market is going to be £16 billion by 2028. So that's extended to 10% of online sales. So this is, I always talk to my team about our mission. I really want us to be a growth engine for retailers. It's hard out there. Margins are compressed, profitability is under real pressure. And I do genuinely think that there is a big upside opportunity, across TikTok and across, discovery commerce. And I think that's showed in the numbers there. But, what I would say as well, it takes time to build capability. I start to talk about some of these things like, building out lots and lots, the content engine that fuels discovery commerce. Going live tomorrow for 6 hours. This stuff is not easy, and that's why I think it's emerged from those nimble, sort of very much of TikTok Shop brands. But what I see now is it's rapidly escalating out to the more mainstream retailers.
Yeah, that is really interesting. You touched on some of the challenges that retailers are facing, and I think on top of some of the cost pressures and the kind of broader, challenging macro climate, there's also the challenge of navigating all these new channels because it's not just social commerce, but it's also marketplaces, it's quick commerce. Before we know it, it'll be AI agents doing our shopping for us. And so there's lots of new technology, lots of new trends for retailers to keep up with. And not only keep up with, but also kind of work out what's hype and what's really going to stick. I think at the end of the day, retailers need to be where their customers are, and they are on social media, they are on TikTok. So for those brands that are maybe feeling a little bit reticent and don't really know how to get started, what advice do you have for them?
I mean, first of all, I'd say that I'm hearing the same. it is tough out there. I think, the world of agentic AI, most retailers I speak to, they say that search traffic is going down. They're seeing more, traffic from AI bots, crawlers, what have you, on their website. So I mean, it's a tough space at the moment. What I would say is that especially if we are working towards a world of agentic AI, which I genuinely believe that there will become a time where I can say to an AI chatbot, I want to buy this product. Can you go and look at the best options, pricing for me? And it will come back and present me with some options. I think if we're in that kind of world, discovery becomes even more important, because ultimately you have these kind of agents doing some of that on your behalf. So I actually think the space that we're playing in, where people spend, we have 30 million people spending an hour and a half a day on average on our platform, so like a movie's worth of content. It is a great opportunity to intercept that entertainment where people are very leaned in. It's hard to watch TV and TikTok at the same time. I've tried. So people are pretty dialed in. And so I think it's a great way to intersperse, discovery into that.
That's really interesting. I never thought about that kind of double screening, because I'm very guilty of that. But yeah, I guess I haven't tried it with TikTok, and I can see why that would be challenging. Do you have any examples of retailers or brands that are doing this really well, that have really nailed the platform and are seeing tangible sales growth? Because I know you just mentioned, or you mentioned earlier, about how it's potentially easier for those smaller, more agile, maybe independent brands to do that. But also you're seeing this coming from the bigger brands as well. So I just wonder if you can share any case studies with us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so one of the big questions I get asked, particularly by CMOs of large retail brands, who's doing it well? Who's the bit? Like, everyone's obviously got their eye over their sort of shoulders, looking at others. And look, there are large retailers that are doing a great job. But typically, my recommendation is to not look at each other and to look at the some of those more nimble D2C brands. I mean, it's hard to isolate. I'll isolate a couple, but I think Wonderskin has been an incredible example of someone that has built an enormous amount of success both in the UK and the US. So Wonderskin is a lip stain brand. You might have seen them. They're in Boots now. They've been doing a lot of out-of-home advertising recently, but they are a large TikTok Shop customer and a large advertiser on TikTok as well. And I think they've brought a lot of the elements together around building this content engine. The TikTok is really hungry in terms of the amount of fresh content it needs to drive success. On their TikTok Shop program, they have a really large and well-run affiliate program that churns out and develops more content for them as well. So I think they've done a lot of things and put it all together to build a really successful business. And they've just taken a 50 million Series A as well to really catapult their growth. I personally, I love the fact that is a UK born and bred brand. Their founder, Michael, is an incredible entrepreneur. I think also P. Louise. So P. Louise, again, a British beauty brand founded by Paige Williams in Stockport. Again, I believe it scaled over 100 million pounds of revenue. And again, I think in terms of what they do on live, is absolutely incredible. So they just beat our record, our UK and European record for the amount of sales volume on a single live. So they went live for 14 hours. So remember what I was saying about, most retailers, I think, would struggle to go live for, a few hours once a month. They do it on a pretty regular basis, pretty much a daily basis. But then they did one of these special lives for their Christmas advent calendar. And generated $2.7 million in 14 hours. And so that is an incredible
Wow.
result. So yeah, just a couple of examples. That's what I always say to the big retailers: look at what the D2Cs are doing.
Okay, that's really good advice. That's really interesting, and I guess in that case, with an advent calendar this time of year, it's creating that sense of urgency, and you've got that real time engagement where people can ask questions and see demos, and yeah, it's really interesting. I think taking a step back away from um, pure sort of social commerce, I think the sort of trend towards live shopping has been interesting to watch as an analyst because, it's been something that has been very popular in Asia for a very long time, but has been a little bit slower to take off in the West. And I know some retailers have tried doing their own versions, but it feels like where we're landing is this is something that works really well on a platform like TikTok. So I just wonder, I guess, do you have any advice for some of the big high street retailers that have maybe experimented with their own version of live shopping, but trying to work out next steps?
Yeah, I think it's true. There were a lot of people that were skeptical about live for a long time. Maybe, probably even now. But I mean, we do about 6,000 live shopping sessions a day in the UK, and the sales volume is up 93% year over year. So, this is a thing now. I fully believe that. And people like to draw the comparison with QVC. It's not a million miles away. But I think the time is now to sort of sit up and take notice. I always think some of the numbers that we're putting in terms of GMV growth on the platform, number of live sessions. We sell a beauty product every second on TikTok Shop. I think you can't really ignore the trend now, because when you compound these numbers year over year over year, they get really big pretty quickly. So typically when I'm speaking to larger retailers, I think this probably falls in that larger bucket of digital transformation. To be able to go live, that you need a studio, you need a presenter, you need the tech. And so it can be as easy as going live with a mobile phone and a ring light, or it can be, a full studio setup. But obviously, larger retailers, have bigger teams, more complexity, more brands, guidelines. So it takes time to build the capability. And, I always generally say is that you don't have to be the biggest brand on it now, but I think you should be prudent, and get involved and build that capability, because, if you wait until the horse is bolted, then, you're going to be playing catch up. And I think, you've probably seen a lot of this. All the data points to the retailers that are leading on digital are more resilient, and grow at a faster rate over time. So I think this is an extension of that. And look, I think also there was a marquee moment when Lidl joined TikTok Shop. I think it was early this year, and released their bundle. It was a protein bundle, 3,000 items. It was a sort of a tactical play. It sold out in under 20 minutes. I think that was a real catalyst as well for lots of other retailers to sort of sit up and take notice.
Yeah, because if a discount retailer that doesn't really do e-commerce, that has dabbled with e-commerce and click and collect over the years, but doesn't really do e-commerce, if they can get on TikTok and shift product, then I think there's obviously, it's obviously a place for everyone.
On that point, we actually had a press release go out this morning. So Asda are joining TikTok Shop, and they are launching with a Tickled Pink range or bundle of products, a partnership with breast cancer awareness. So the latest one to go.
Hot off the press. That's interesting. And I guess before we move on, because I do want to talk about your shopper report as well. But before we move on to that, what advice would you have for these big retailers? Like, do you see the opportunity to create this real kind of this, again, it's like a sense of urgency, immediacy around limited stock, get it now while it lasts, which to be fair, Lidl does very well in store as well. And I just wonder, especially because grocery is such a challenging sector, especially when it comes to e-commerce. But again, goes back to the point where you need to be where your shoppers are. So I just wonder what you're seeing and what advice you have for some of these big retailers.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it all really comes down to, I think, having the senior buy-in and having a smallish, nimble team of kind of different parts of the business. The interesting thing about this is that the people that you need to really exploit TikTok across both the advertising and the shop side spans everything from marketing, senior management, to content creation, various agencies, the e-commerce business, logistics, and so you need a kind of small team. We don't want to kind of make it feel like it's too much of a big effort, but I think having that senior buy-in, typically the retailers that are moving quickest, it's where a very senior sort of C-suite person on that team is driving it forward. And I have we have clients where the CMO is like a massive, typically they have kids as well, and they're like massive.
They get
TikTok
it.
fans. Yeah, exactly. They're big TikTok fans themselves, and they're driving it forward themselves.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so let's talk about your shopping report, because this is the first time you've put out a UK specific shopping report, and it is a fascinating read. So I'll make sure to link to it in the show notes. You're in a pretty privileged position to understand not only the content and the kind of trends and topics that consumers are engaging with, but also the deeper values that really shape the way that we shop. So, can you talk us through some of the findings? What did you find most interesting from the report?
Yeah, well, I guess first and foremost, as when I'm speaking to retailers, one, they're asking me what everyone else is doing. Two, they are asking me, how do we tap into all these trends, all of this stuff that's going on TikTok, that fire hose of data of, what's hot, what's trending, what the nation is shopping on TikTok. So that was the reason that we put together this report. We're going to put it together on a more regular basis, and there'll be mini reports as well. And we also have something called our Creative Center, where we actually have a hashtag dashboard. So this report pulls together three predominant sources of data that we publish. So hashtag video views. So that is the amount of views that have a hashtag attached to them. For example, food talk, which is a popular food tag. It also has search query data as well. So we're seeing an increasing amount of searches. And then also TikTok shop sales data. So we wanted to combine these three sources of data and kind of tell the stories of what's trending. I mean, in terms of like what I took out, I think, I get a lot of food content, and I think food is a fascinating topic on TikTok, because there's so much innovation there. And I have some retailers, that in the grocery space, they're saying like it's their sort of number one sort of innovation space for food at the moment. So yeah, I mean, food talk is I'd say like the big hashtag that is attached to this. But I think it's important, before I go into like some of the trends, to recognize that there are evergreen trends like food talk, for example, or in fashion and beauty, it might be get ready with me, that are sort of pretty constant. In food, I'd probably even put like protein in that now. Protein continues to just be quite a big one. But then there are these moments that rise up very, very quickly and then can kind of fall away. Well, they might retain at a certain threshold, but like I couldn't have told you that cucumber salad was going to be an enormous sort of breakout success this year. So that was off the back of like this one video that a guy did about making this very appetizing cucumber salad. And, the next thing you know, that's blown up. Everyone's making cucumber salad videos, and you're walking into the supermarkets and you're seeing cucumber salads in the salad aisles. So I think that was absolutely fascinating. I mean, Dubai chocolate was really big this year. Can't really ignore that. Pistachios as well have continued, just anything with pistachio in, frankly. Dubai chocolate was interesting because then again, Lidl capitalized on that. Their second drop on TikTok shop was a Dubai chocolate launch, and again sold out, I think, under 20 minutes. And And you've then seen that also feed into to NPD. So Marks and Spencer's, launched the Big Daddy, which I'm a big fan of. It's this, sort of Dubai chocolate inspired with sort of a layer of caramel, like it needed to be sweeter, product. So I think it's fascinating space, the impact of these trends that they have on culture.
Well, the Dubai chocolate trend, that led to a global pistachio shortage. Like that just
Yeah,
went
yeah.
crazy. I know supermarkets were limiting the stock that they were selling in stores, and it just went really crazy really quickly.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, the impact on the supply chain is incredible. Um, we also saw a lot of fake away content. So people trying to sort of recreate takeaways, smash burgers, um, chili chicken, and all manner of different recipes was really breaking out. Um, and actually, people more recently, because I mentioned our creative center. So this is actually a really interesting tool. It's available to anyone. You can go on there and you can select a vertical category and a time period, and you can actually see what hashtags are breaking out. So I was on that this morning, and you can see now there's slow cooker recipes, obviously, because it's we're coming into that season. There is lunch boxes, obviously, because we're back to school. People trying to come up with sort of healthy lunchbox ideas. You see a lot of bakery terms and also GBBO, inspired by obviously Great British Bake Off. So Bake Talk is a really big sort of evergreen area. And then I would say mushroom. So like someone was asking, what's my big tip? I think mushroom, and the health benefits of mushrooms, there's various sort of mushroom ingredients now you can add to drinks and what have you, seems to be emerging as well as a pretty big trend. But yeah, look, there's so much in there.
That is really interesting, and I think of when you look at the categories that seem to do well on TikTok, it is those visually rich categories like home, beauty, fashion, food, as you just said. Where do you see the big opportunity going forward?
Well, so I think MPD is tough because it takes time to turn around a product, but I think then also you can just sort of. I mean, we saw the Waitrose came out with the crookie, I think it was the cookie croissant. So that's an interesting one. But again, so we've actually seen a huge amount of live success by the Fat Butcher recently. So they've become the largest seller in our fresh food category, shipping high quality meat around the UK, and going live to sort of demonstrate that. We've seen Trip Drinks, incredible success story. They're our top soft drink on TikTok Shop now. Between obviously their sort of peak period is obviously sort of dry January. This dry January, their sales over December are up 450% on TikTok Shop. They're actually outselling Heineken, I believe. And they see the impact also on their other sales channels. And again, I think the interesting thing for me with them is that it's not just their typical grocery 4-pack that's selling. Actually, on TikTok Shop, it gives them that they've seen the 12 packs, and potentially larger selling well. So larger formats as well. People are prepared to bulk buy.
And is it consumers mostly discovering those products, or are people now actively going onto TikTok and searching for those items?
I think it's both really. People are discovering them, no doubt, but also the thing about building community, going live. A lot of people they join the lives every day for some of these brands. So it can be the same customer. You can build a real community. But I think the point you just raised there, I mean, it might be a nice segue is potentially into search. So when I described up front, we're a video platform, an entertainment platform. You come here to be entertained. We have also now seen a pivot in behavior also to that of search. So we already now today have about 57% of our users that are using search on a regular basis. We do billions of searches globally a day, and that's growing at 40% year over year. So again, this is just a trend that has emerged on our platform, and I think The most interesting one of these actually is, and is an interesting consumer behavior, is that about 25% of sessions on TikTok, about 1 in 4 users, they open search and search within 30 seconds of opening the app. So actually people are now, they're obviously, that implies to me they are seeing something, in the real life, they're thinking of something, and then they are opening TikTok to go to search. And the responses they get in search results are really engaging. So it's a really interesting trend.
When they do that, are they looking for advice, product reviews, like, other people's opinions, or more product information? What type of information are they seeking at that point?
Yeah, this is the, I think, the big question. I think we always are very conscious to say, look, I don't think people open it up to go to their first port of call for, let's say perhaps car insurance or something. I think traditional search is probably still the way people go, but I think genuinely people are opening up search to be entertained, to be engaged. It is a more engaging form of search, I would say, than the more traditional, forms of, getting returned a link. I mean, it is a fascinating space at the moment, search. There is a lot of innovation, obviously, with AI. But I think, again, if I put my consumer hat on and I think about it through the lens of a consumer, if I'm looking for a restaurant review, or if I'm going on holiday and I want to kind of see what a city might be like, or if I want to learn about a particular product, these are all really good queries that I think that we do an excellent job of answering. And the results, they're not just sort of like the sort of the corporate view of, what that holiday provider or, manufacturer might have produced. It is creators giving their real opinion. And you're seeing this really quite authentic view of, what that restaurant is really like, or what that destination looks like.
Yeah, I think authentic is the word, isn't it? It's that unfiltered, authentic view. And I think that's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Paul, but I would imagine that that would also attract some of the older demographic that you just mentioned. I mean, that kind of experience feels very unique to TikTok. That's not something that other platforms can really replicate. So I wonder if maybe that's getting more people using the platform and then potentially doing some shopping while they're on the platform as well.
Yeah, well, we actually launched search ads in the UK about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. So, obviously we're keen to monetize that, and I think, advertisers then coming along provide, lots more value to those search results as well. Um, and it's a really interesting quandary, because if I'm then a retailer, it's like, well, okay, how do I create really interesting, compelling video content that is also authentic, that speaks to this search query? And not just that, not just how do I produce that myself, also how do I work with creators potentially to build that content out as well. So we are having lots of conversations with search teams in clients and agencies, as to how they can build out their search presence.
And as a retailer, should retailers' TikTok content be different to content they post on other social channels?
I would say yes. Look, I mean, obviously there's an amount of sort of cross pollination that you can do, but there is definitely, and we have lots of research that backs it up, that shows that this native TikTok authentic content is what really resonates the most with our users. Um, and so there are moments, and we have, certain formats where I think, a more traditional brand advert, for example, can work. But I think, yeah, the majority of the content, it's about being authentic.
Yeah. Paul, before I let you go, I'd love to just zoom out for a second and get some thoughts on how you see shopping evolving in the future. And we sort of touched on this earlier, but I'd love to just get your thoughts there, and specifically what our retail listeners can do to ensure that they're staying relevant to customers in the future.
I think in this space, AI is the hot topic. And so, I think we talked about it earlier in terms of the impact of agentic AI. And we need this to obviously play out a little bit over the coming, feels like months. This feels like there's an announcement every month, doesn't it? And years. Um, So I'm following that closely. We're doing a lot in AI as well, to kind of help to stoke that. So, just one example is the impact that we can have on AI to supercharge content. So we've got a platform called Symphony AI as part of our suite of products that allows you to do seamless translation, for example, or to do text to video, or to use your catalog of products to produce sort of like dynamic video versions of that catalog that aren't static. So I think AI is going to be a big piece of that, but I think also just again, to sort of rehash what I said earlier, I think in that world, discovery is super, super important. I'm speaking to retailers who could foresee a time where their website could be, just frankly, a text box, where you enter in, what are you interested in? I think in that world, discovery is so important, and intercepting people, in their moments of entertainment. So yeah, with an hour and a half a day of content being consumed on TikTok, I do think it's, go back to my sort of original mission. It's all about growth, and I feel like there is money being left on the table by some retailers, for them to do more on our platform. Obviously I would say that, but I genuinely believe it as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did tee you up to say that, by the way. So, but no, it is true. And I, as an objective analyst, I 100% agree. This feels like the direction of travel. Retailers, they may not have to be present in every single channel. But I think when it comes to social commerce and discovery commerce, as you put it so nicely, that is the way that e-commerce is evolving. And I don't think retailers can ignore it. So totally agree. Paul, it's been so great to have you on the podcast and learn all about TikTok and the opportunities for retailers. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.